If your insulin is low, you lose fat. You've probably heard this line, maybe from a keto influencer, maybe from a podcast, and there's real science behind why insulin matters for fat storage. But the full story is more interesting and more useful than that one sentence suggests. Because if lowering insulin alone were enough, you could achieve permanent fat loss by simply avoiding carbs, no calorie awareness required. And for most people, that's just not how it plays out in the real world. So today we're breaking down what insulin actually does, where this claim comes from, where it's right, and where it quietly oversimplifies your biology. Here's why this topic gets so much attention. Insulin is genuinely one of the most important hormones in fat storage. It's not a myth that insulin matters. The myth is in the shortcut. The idea that managing insulin alone, without any regard for how much you eat, guarantees fat loss. So we're going to cover 4 things. What insulin actually does in your body, why low insulin doesn't automatically mean fat loss, where this claim actually comes from, and what genuinely determines whether you gain or lose fat, including where managing insulin honestly does help. Let's start with the hormone itself. Section 1. What insulin actually does. Insulin is released by your pancreas mainly in response to rising blood sugar, most often after eating carbohydrates, though protein triggers some release too. Its main job is to help move glucose out of your bloodstream and into your cells, where it can be used for energy or stored. Here's the part relevant to fat loss. Insulin is also what's called an anti-lipolytic hormone, meaning it suppresses the breakdown of stored fat.
When insulin is elevated, your body is biased towards storing energy rather than releasing it from fat cells. When insulin is low, that brake is released, and your body becomes more willing to tap into fat stores for fuel. This is the real mechanism behind the claim, and it's accurate as far as it goes. Lower insulin does create a hormonal environment more favorable to fat release. The problem is what happens next, because favorable conditions for fat release aren't the same thing as guaranteed fat loss. Section 2. Why low insulin alone doesn't guarantee fat loss. Here's the piece that gets left out. Yes, low insulin makes it easier for your body to release fat from storage, but whether that released fat actually gets burned versus simply floating in your bloodstream and eventually getting stored again depends on whether you're in a calorie deficit overall. This has actually been tested directly. Researchers have compared very low-carb, low-insulin diets against higher-carb diets while matching total calories and protein between groups. When calories are equal, fat loss outcomes tend to end up remarkably similar between the two approaches, even though the low-carb group has meaningfully lower insulin levels throughout the day. This tells us something important. The insulin difference alone isn't the deciding factor once calories are matched. Why does this happen? Because your body doesn't just care about insulin, it cares about total energy balance. If you eat in a calorie surplus on a low-carb diet, insulin stays relatively low, but you can still gain fat because your body has more incoming energy than it needs, and it will find ways to store the excess even without high insulin driving the process. Conversely, in a genuine calorie deficit, people lose fat across a wide range of insulin levels because the fundamental driver of fat loss is your body needing to draw on stored energy to make up for what it isn't getting from food. This is why some people who cut carbs dramatically still don't lose weight if their overall intake stays high. Snacking on cheese, nuts, and fatty proteins can add up quickly. And why some people who eat more moderate carbs alongside a calorie deficit lose fat perfectly well despite higher insulin levels than a strict keto dieter. Section 3. Where this claim actually comes from. This idea has a name in nutrition science, the carbohydrate insulin model of obesity. The theory proposes that refined carbohydrates drive up insulin. Insulin drives fat storage and traps energy inside fat cells, and that trapped energy then drives hunger, because your body senses it doesn't have enough usable fuel circulating, even though you're storing plenty of it. It's a genuinely interesting hypothesis, and it helped push a lot of useful research forward. But when researchers have run tightly controlled trials specifically designed to test this model, carefully matching calories and protein while only varying carbohydrate and fat ratios, the predicted advantage in fat loss for the low insulin
low-carb approach generally hasn't shown up the way the strongest version of the theory would predict.
Some studies have found small differences in specific measures like resting energy expenditure, but the differences in actual fat loss over time tend to be modest at best once everything else is controlled for. This doesn't mean insulin is irrelevant. It means the model likely overstated how much insulin alone drives the outcome compared to overall energy balance. Section 4. So does insulin matter at all?
Yes, and here's where it genuinely helps, just not in the standalone way the original claim suggests. Lower, steadier insulin levels can make a calorie deficit easier to sustain. Sharp insulin spikes and crashes are associated with hunger and cravings for many people, so eating in a way that keeps insulin steadier, more protein and fiber, fewer refined carbs and sugary drinks, can make it easier to stick to a deficit without feeling constantly hungry. That's a real, meaningful benefit, but it's an indirect one, working through appetite and adherence rather than some direct insulin to fat loss pathway that bypasses calories. Insulin sensitivity matters here too. People with insulin resistance, where cells respond poorly to insulin and the body compensates by producing more of it, often do see real benefits from lower carb approaches, partly because managing carbohydrate intake directly addresses the underlying issue. But this is a different situation from a healthy person with normal insulin sensitivity simply trying to lose fat, where the calorie deficit remains the primary driver, regardless of which macronutrient approach gets them there. There's also a muscle and hormone health angle. Very low carbohydrate intake for extended periods can sometimes make intense exercise harder to sustain, since carbohydrates are your body's preferred fuel for high-intensity effort, and preserving muscle mass during fat loss depends partly on being able to train effectively. This is one reason some people find a moderate rather than extremely low-carb approach easier to sustain long-term while still losing fat. So, is the claim true? Partly. Low insulin does make your body more willing to release stored fat. That part is real biology. But whether that fat actually gets burned for good depends on your overall calorie balance, not insulin alone. The most useful takeaway isn't insulin is the secret or carbs are the enemy. It's that managing insulin can be one tool that makes a calorie deficit easier to sustain, especially if you struggle with cravings or have insulin resistance. But it was never a replacement for that deficit in the first place. If this gave you a clearer, more accurate picture than the soundbite version, subscribe for more evidence-based breakdowns like this one, and let me know in the comments. Have you tried lower carbs specifically to manage cravings, or do you focus more on total calories? One last thing worth remembering. The version of this claim that goes viral is almost always the simplest, most absolute version, because nuance doesn't travel as fast as a bold statement. That doesn't mean the bold statement is worthless. There's usually a real mechanism buried inside it. It just means the mechanism is one piece of a larger system, not the whole system by itself. Understanding that difference is what actually helps you build a strategy that works long-term, rather than chasing whichever single hormone happens to be trending this month.